Good afternoon and welcome to the Boise Metro Chamber's Metro Minute series. I'm Tori Thomas, your Community and Government Affairs Manager here at the Boise Metro Chamber and your host for today's event. Happy New Year. We're excited to kick off the new year with some expert guests giving you a quick updates on business impact. The Boise Metro Chamber is Idaho's only 5-star accredited chamber and represents nearly 2,000 members. We are only able to provide current events and educational content because of our members and their investment in our community. Before I introduce our speaker for today, I'd like to thank Holly Troxel for their generous support. Please enjoy this quick video from our sponsor.
I'm Tom Mortel, co-managing partner of Holly Troxel. Our firm is proud to be the sponsor of the Boise Metro Chamber's Metro Minute. In the 6 communities we serve throughout Idaho and Eastern Washington, we have the pleasure of providing legal services to great companies, large and small. Similar to the Chamber, we represent companies from Main Street businesses to some of the largest corporations in our area. We appreciate the opportunity to advocate on their behalf as a part of the Chamber's advocacy program and to further the Chamber's efforts to advocate on behalf of its members. Welcome to the Metro Minute. Please enjoy today's presentation.
For today's episode, we're joined by Mollie McCarty. Hi, Mollie. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Tori.
I will do a quick bio for you, and then we'll get going with some questions. McCarty has served at the Idaho Transportation Department for 26 years, holding various roles before becoming the first Chief External Affairs Officer in 2021. From 2008 to 2021, she led the department's policy and government relations efforts during major transportation initiatives, including Governor Otter's task force on modernizing transportation funding. Before joining the department, she worked in public relations at Elgin Seifert Drake, now Drake Cooper, and spent a decade in television and radio news, including 7 years as an anchor at Boise's KBOI TV. McCarty holds a bachelor's degree in communications with a broadcast emphasis from Pacific Lutheran University. So thank you again for being here. We appreciate your service to our great state of Idaho, and I'm excited to chat with you today.
Thank you so much.
All right, so let's chat about some transportation investment. We've seen a lot of significant investments in our community, and specifically Treasure Valley in recent years. Can you kind of give us a little bit of the background on what's happening?
Yeah, well, absolutely. These are historic times, nothing short of historic. What's happening right now across the entire state, as well as the Treasure Valley, is unprecedented. So it's a very, very exciting time to be involved in transportation right now in Idaho. And for people like me who have been in the transportation policy arena for a very long time, I can tell you this has been a very, very long time coming. I go back, you mentioned the Governor Otter's Transportation Funding Task Force. I go back to that. We issued a report for that in 2011, and it was actually chaired at that time by Governor Little. And it was just an extremely difficult time. I think the previous 2 sessions before that, there had been efforts in the legislature to increase transportation funding. Our department, as well as local jurisdictions, had been working significantly to try to raise the concerns about where we were in our state and the lack of ability to maintain what are very, very important assets to the state. And so, and it didn't help that we were in the Great Recession at that time. So legislators were very adverse to increasing taxes. And so what we were really doing during that time was doing a lot of education, trying to help people understand what the risks were if something didn't change. And I should also mention, prior to that, we worked on what was known as the Garvey program. And I think a lot of your members will remember that and probably are familiar with it. It started under Governor Kempthorne. And another bonding program, an opportunity to borrow for the ability to do big capacity projects, but it did not come with any increased funding. It was just a tool that we were able to use to maximize our resources, which was good. A lot of incredible work happened. Much of it, more than half of it, was in the Treasure Valley. So when you look at these massive improvements for those of us who've been in the Treasure Valley for a number of years on I-84, that was made possible by the Garvey program. It also kind of worked a little bit against us because we had this work that was going on. And at the same time, we were talking about the need to increase revenues. So I think for some people, it was not intuitive that there was really any sort of a major crisis per se that needed to be addressed. So that's kind of what we were dealing with, and just really working hard to educate the public and certainly our legislators about what was going on. The governor's task force ended up determining a shortfall statewide for both maintaining, preserving the existing infrastructure as well as safety and capacity needs. They developed a shortfall estimate of well over $500 million annually. And so that was kind of, for a lot of our efforts, that's what we were doing. The Garvey program was winding down, and we were getting into this mode where, frankly, all we were doing was just trying to make sure we could prevent the infrastructure from getting any worse than it was, trying to just basically hold on to it. Then everything kind of broke a little bit in 2015. In that year, the legislature did increase user fees. They increased the gas tax by 7 cents a gallon, and registration fees increased by $26 annually. That produced well over $100 million annually, which was obviously very short of what the need was, but at the same time was an excellent start, got things moving in the right direction, and we were able to make some progress there. Then we go to 2017, and that's where the TECM program began, which we're going to talk about primarily today. And I actually have some information I can share on screen to get into a few of the details that I think might be interesting to our viewers here. TECM stands for Transportation Expansion and Congestion Mitigation, and it was an initiative of legislators, primarily in the House at that time. And what it did is it provided for a 1% transfer of sales tax revenue to the Transportation Department, for the state highway system. The name kind of explains it. It's for congestion, big safety, congestion relieving types of projects, because until then we were pretty much not able to do any of that kind of work. So it was an acknowledgement that need was there. The other thing that's interesting about that is that there had been a lot of debate over user fees versus being able to use sales tax or general funds to fund transportation. There were some real concerns about which was the better approach to do that. And so this was a compromise. It was a real small amount. I think the first year that this was in place, it generated about $15 million annually. So not a lot to work with. Then in 2019, the legislature added an option for this program to be bonded. And again, it didn't get a lot of attention because, just the fund was so small at that time. Well, then came 2021, and that's where everything changed. And for those of us in this line of work, it was just an amazing experience. It was largely due to our incredible economy. Our economy was surging, the revenues were coming in. We're just very, very fortunate that way. So that allowed this discussion to change. So the legislature increased the program, the TECM program, from 1% to 4.5%, with a fixed amount of $80 million to the Transportation Department. And Governor Little signed that into law as part of his Leading Idaho initiative. And he also this was also the beginning of additional general fund transfers proposed by the governor, which are currently a little bit over 300 million annually, and those are split 60-40 between state and local jurisdictions. On that chart you saw there, you could see strategic initiatives was on there. It's a piece of that funding. I don't want to get too much into this and get complicated, but that's where those funds go. So you can see we have a number of funds that we utilize to do our work. But the strategic initiatives and the TECM program are largely what we utilize for these big projects that generate a lot of interest and, of course, alleviate safety problems and congestion. So in the last 3 years, this has allowed us to program about $3 billion worth of highway and bridge projects throughout the state, with about $1 billion of that being bonded. This spring, we plan to do our final bond sale. So people are amazed. This has been moving very, very quickly. This will be our final bond sale for this program. It's going to be about another $350 million in projects. And then that will essentially put us at about $1.3 billion bonded. And that will consume the entire $80 million that we have available. So the timing was very good for Governor Little to propose an extension of this program, knowing that there are still many needs out there. Before we move on to your next question, Tori, I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't mention, through all of this history and all of these things that have taken place to really get us to where we are with these investments, the business communities around Idaho, and definitely Treasure Valley, Boise being at the forefront, the business communities and chamber organizations were engaged the entire way and were advocating for transportation investments. We just find that business communities tend to be strong advocates for transportation. They view it as something that's very important to have vital communities that thrive. So they were there. They were working. They were reaching out to their legislators and talking about these things. And I don't believe all this would have been possible. I don't believe we would be where we are right now had it not been for those people being engaged.
Well, thank you so much for the history of that and for everything that's gone into that. It's also really great to hear that the business community has been such great partners. I think obviously transportation is a huge part of successful businesses, being able to get people there, or even just people to stores, but then also people to their work and be safe about it. So I'm glad to hear that there's such a great community going on between transportation and the business community. Well, diving a little deeper into TECM, obviously it encompasses all of Idaho. Can you kind of specifically talk a little bit about how it's benefited the Treasure Valley? Right.
Let me, if you would, I'll start with statewide interest just briefly, if I can. Maybe just give a little bit of an overview of what we did after all these things happened in 2021. And if we could show a map, these are corridors that we developed working together with our transportation board. We have a board that oversees the department and makes the decisions on crucial matters, certainly including this. And so working together, we developed 13 corridors around the state where we have been primarily focusing our efforts. We haven't been able to do construction in all of these corridors. The resources, as amazing, as helpful as they are, it isn't enough to do all the things that need to be done in the corridors. But this is where we focused our efforts. Certainly I-90 has been getting some work, some attention, US 95, Highway 75 in the Wood River Valley, US 20 in eastern Idaho has been something we've been looking at. So that's kind of where we were able to look in terms of those big corridors throughout Idaho. Let's take a look now at the Treasure Valley portion. We've essentially been working on 5 corridors. And let's talk a little bit about Highway 16. This is a brand new highway from Chinden to I-84. So the portion that we already have from 44 to Chinden was done with the Garvey program that I mentioned earlier. So now we're working on Chinden to I-84. It provides just another much needed north-south corridor in the Treasure Valley for anyone who's trying to travel in north-south knows, we basically have Eagle Road right now. So this is going to be tremendously helpful. It's being designed as limited access, which means that it is designed for a lot of volume of traffic to travel safely. And that's really what we need. It'll connect in with I-84 and have a significant system interchange there. So it's going to be pretty much a significant change for the Treasure Valley. The interchanges actually are likely going to be part of that spring bond sale that I mentioned earlier that is coming up. And so essentially it'll be 2 lanes in each direction with a very well separated median. On I-84, how can we talk about transportation without I-84? I mean, it's really the backbone, not just of the Treasure Valley, it's really the backbone of the entire state because it brings, it functions for the Treasure Valley, which affects everybody. And so what we're doing there is we're widening in Caldwell from Franklin Road to Centennial Way at this time. It just builds off of what happened with the Garvey program previously. We're doing some other improvements there. We're replacing the 10th Avenue interchange. We're adding a traffic signal at the Centennial Way interchange westbound off-ramp. The pedestrian overpass will be rehabilitated. And so that's a quick overview on what's happening right now with I-84. Let's talk a little bit about US 2026, which is Chinden. So much explosive growth. When you talk about growth, we're having growth that's happening in the southern part of Treasure Valley quite a bit, but really it's going out west. It's that east-west travel. We've essentially got 3 corridors that are primary. It's the Interstate 84, it's Chinden, and it's 44. Chinden has got significant problems with congestion and explosive growth. And so what we've done is we've widened it from I-84 to Middleton Road and also from Star to Eagle Road. What we're looking at that we'd like to get to as soon as we're able to is the section from Middleton to Star. We've got that currently programmed out several years, 29 to 30. We might be able to advance it depending on what funding opportunities arise, but that is a huge project that's going to make a tremendous difference to the Treasure Valley. We're looking at 55 in Canyon County. So this is south of Nampa, and we are building from Farmway to Middleton Road. That will likely also be part of our spring bond sale funding that project. For people out in Canyon County, they will tell you, again, it's been exploding out there. So 55 has just had so much development, so many changes, significant safety concerns, crashes. And so this will be widening it there, adding many safety improvements and really making for a huge difference for people who use that corridor. And then finally, mentioning Highway 44, which is on the north side of the Treasure Valley. We are doing an environmental study from I-84 to Star. I don't need to tell anyone this, but I'll say it's just a vital east-west corridor, bringing people into their business in Boise, to the State House, to be able to have access to government. It's a primary corridor, and it's got some significant problems, as anybody will tell you. So we have not been able to get to construction as part of this program on 44, but we are working as fast as we can to get it prepared to ensure all of the environmental issues are addressed. Since the last time we were able to look at it, looking at right-of-way issues, working with the local communities, we are hopeful, depending on funding, that we might be able to get to some work to to address some of these problems on 44. It needs to be 2 lanes all the way through to Caldwell, with significant improvements in the median. And I guess, just the final thing I would say, when you ask what are the benefits of the program to the Treasure Valley, we really, the economic improvement, the mobility, the things that it's generating is phenomenal, but the safety aspect is something we really should emphasize. What we learned with the Garvey program when we were doing all those other significant projects, we looked at the crash data before and after those projects were done. And the change in the statistics was amazing. In some cases, we were seeing serious injury, crashes, fatalities cut in half or even more. just dramatic changes. So we know that these types of projects will save lives. These are the types of things that make sure that our families go home safely every day. So obviously hard to understate, what the impact has been to the Treasure Valley with these investments.
Wow, that is so amazing. I mean, obviously we know there's so much construction going on and updates going on, but it's truly amazing to see how much work is being put into. I mean, I've lived here. We moved here when I was 2, so I claim native, and it's just been beautiful to watch it grow, and also frustrating sometimes. But I think the safety component is such a great one to focus on. I have a lot of younger siblings driving around and seeing a completely different Boise than I grew up with, and that's my main concern, is making sure everyone gets home and everyone's safe and gets to enjoy our beautiful state more. So it's just really amazing to see it grow, and hopefully we'll continue to see new projects coming up and better ways to get connected. So we'll kind of continuing on with Tecum. You mentioned the governor putting a request in his State of the Address. So can you share with us a little bit about what's going on, if there's a proposal out? I know House Bill 25 is kind of a big topic right now. So if you could share a little bit on that and kind of what that perspective is on that, that'd be great.
So given that the program is, pretty much consuming what it's able to do for construction, we also are aware that we have upwards of $10 billion still in unmet needs on primary corridors throughout the state. So the governor, as you mentioned, he proposed a $50 million increase in the Tecum program to add to the $80 million that we have. That would allow us to bond about an additional $800 million in projects, depending on interest rates and a few other factors, possibly up to $1 billion worth. So it really would be kind of like, it'd be phase 2, which would be very exciting and would allow us to do a lot of work throughout the state. House Bill 25 is currently being considered. It is in the House, and it's very similar. So it appears to meet the goals that were attempted with the governor's recommendation. It would seem it actually increases the program by $60 million instead of $50 million, and then it phases it in by $20 million increments over the next 3 years. So very similar, just kind of that's really essentially the difference, and that would definitely allow us to bond easily $1 billion worth of additional projects that we would address throughout the state, Tori. But it's January, so I guess I want to throw. We all know it's early, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. We'll certainly be watching it closely.
Yeah, it's definitely still early to make any huge predictions on what the legislature will finalize and put through. But I think it's really it's great to see that legislation come through so early. And in response to the governor's request, I think it's really interesting how they divided it up over that course of 3 years, like you mentioned, and hopefully that's something that we can see happen. So if that does optimistically go through, how could the Treasure Valley be affected?
I have to be very careful in answering the question because we don't know. It would be something that would be a decision again for our transportation board. I can tell you procedurally, if the expansion of this program happens, we do move quickly though, as I think everybody has been able to see. And so we would be working with the transportation board very quickly and looking at corridors that have priority needs. Based on this proposal, we would not be limited to these 13 corridors that we've been looking at. So my anticipation is that we would probably look at it in terms of all corridor needs. We're always learning new things. We're always needing to readdress what's happening with explosive growth. And so things can change. So I would expect we would take a pretty thorough look at the corridors in the state that need attention and work on that with the board, and then proceed how to move forward with projects. It'll be pretty exciting.
Yeah, it seems like it'll be a really great opportunity for the whole state, obviously. And then as the Boise Metro Chamber, we're excited to see in our region what that entails. So, well, before we jump off, I'd love to ask you one more question, kind of bringing it back to the business community. How have you guys been working with consulting and contracting communities and folks, and how's that going? How's that partnership going with the department?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this. I don't know how to overstate the importance of these relationships. None of this would happen without our private sector partners just stepping up incredibly. I don't think our relationship with the contracting community has ever been better, despite the amount of workload, and there are problems to be solved for sure. We increased our communication. We recognize that this is a change in the amount of business we're doing. And so we've done a number of things to try to open up the communication lines, and it has paid dividends. Our contractors are coming to the table with their ideas. And I just don't think we could be working together any better. And same goes for the consulting community. A significant portion of these projects are being designed by the private sector, by consultants. And there were some concerns, I will tell you, Tori, in the legislature in terms of how is all this going to work? Does Idaho have the capability to step up, whether it's the department, the contractors, the consultants, design teams? But the partnership is always the answer. That's what we've learned. And so working with the consultants, they have absolutely done phenomenal work. I think you can see it in terms of the projects that are out there. And none of this would happen without them.
Well, that's so great to hear. I'm so glad that partnerships are thriving. I love your quote. Partnerships are always the answer. Might have to quote you on that one. Well, thank you so much for your time today, but also for just all that you've done for our state. It's amazing to chat with you, and it's very exciting to see what all can happen. And hopefully, we can chat again soon about all of this.
No, absolutely, my pleasure. Would be happy to do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to our viewers today. Thanks for tuning in. A huge thank you to our sponsor again, Holly Troxel, along with our media partners, Idaho Capital Sun, Idaho Education News, and Idaho Press. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.